It's time for ROTD Weekend.
So I am heading to Mexico this weekend. I am going to visit my parents. They have been snowbirding there for a while. And so yeah, all of us are going and it's going to be really, really nice, really relaxing. And I just realized that I cooked the last thing that I'm probably going to cook for a while right before leaving. That's a weird feeling, right? When you cook all the time and then you're going on vacation and you make a meal and you're packing up the leftovers and you're like, oh, when am I going to stir a pot again? You know? So the thing that I made was risotto and we had some chicken with it. So I'm going to be telling you about how I make risotto during the middle part of this show because I don't use a recipe. And I've been doing this series with you guys on the Saturday shows where I am cooking without recipes, telling you how I just make these things that I make all the time. And so this time it is a delicious, very basic risotto. So that will be up soon. I want to tell you though that there is a lot going on with me and Marty, not just the trip to Mexico. We also have some Cook for Two events coming up. Now, 2 of them are for members only. So if you are not a member, what are you waiting for? You need to sign up. Go to COOKforTWO.us. That's COOKforTWO.us and become a member. Join our community for people cooking for two and for anybody who's cooking for a small household or just wants lots of amazing budgeting tips and tips for prepping quickly and for making dinner easier, low effort cooking. We have all of that, but also we have our live events. So the 2 that I'm talking about are called Stir It Up with Christine. These are Zoom conversations. So you come and join me on Zoom and we are talking to each other. You can ask questions. We can just chat about life. I'm going to present about something. So the first one that's coming up is Tuesday, March 24th at 7 p.m. Eastern. I said the first one. We've done several of these, but this is the next one coming up is Tuesday, March 24th at 7 p.m. Eastern. And I'm going to be talking about how to make Easter a small feast for a small household and also some tips for what to do if you are hosting a crowd and then are worried about all those leftovers you're going to be left with after. And it's about having that intention ahead of time. So you're pre-planning for the leftovers, even pre-planning what you're making so you don't end up with leftovers that aren't usable, that kind of thing. That is happening March 24th. And then we have another one on April 13th at 7 p.m. Eastern as well. That one is about smart shopping. We are wandering around the grocery store. Well, in our minds, I'm going to be sitting in my office on Zoom and you're going to be sitting in your home on Zoom, but we're going to be talking about areas of the grocery store where you can save money, little tips and tricks for that and to waste less as well. Sort of as you're shopping, things you can do to waste fewer things. Okay. In addition to those member only events, we also have a public event coming up. It is another Cook for Two live with Christine and Marty. That is on Sunday, March 29th at 6 p.m. We're actually coming to that recording right after an improv class. So we're driving home from downtown Orlando and diving into the recording. And I feel like it's going to be just like real life because this is our normal Sunday routine. When the kids aren't there, we get home from improv, we make ourselves some dinner. So we're going to be cooking what we're actually having for dinner and then a couple of other recipes as well. And we have a lot of fun at these. Marty and I have been taking improv classes now for over a year. We're at the advanced level. We had our final performance this week. We're kind of funny now, or at least we're good together. We have some really fun chemistry and I think you're going to enjoy watching us if you haven't already. So that is Sunday, March 29th at 6 p.m. Eastern. And you'll be able to find that on my YouTube channel. I am Cook the Story on YouTube. Or if you go to thecookful.com/demo, the links will be there for those public events as well. And I'm going to give you just a little taste of the sorts of things that I am talking about in the Stirred Up Lives and in the Cook for Two live events as well. So one of my favorite things right now is to buy the little cans of V8, V8 tomato juice, vegetable juice, juice, that stuff. There's like a 6-pack of these little cans. And well, for one thing, Marty and I both actually really like V8. So it never ever goes to waste if I have to open one for something and we don't finish it right away. But that's what I'm doing with it all the time, is if I need just a little flavor in something, or if a recipe calls for tomato sauce and I don't want to open a whole jar, or like any kind of thing that like it calls for a small amount of broth and I don't want to use broth. I don't want to open a whole carton, or I don't want to mix up the bouillon with the hot water. I don't want to do that. I'll just open a can of V8, and it has so much flavor, substitutes in for all kinds of things. I am obsessed. Give it a try. You'll see how many places you can use it. Really love that idea. And there are so many more like that behind the Cook for Two membership. So please come and join us there, cookfor2.us. Okay, as promised, I am going to be telling you how I make risotto on a regular weeknight. It does involve standing at the stove and stirring, but sometimes I'm just in the mood for that. I feel like cooking. Maybe I kind of knew that I'm not going to be cooking for like over a week and just wanted that extra time in the kitchen. I think that's probably what happened, and that's why I made it yesterday. So anyhow, when I feel like really being in there, this is what I make, and I'm going to tell you all about that right after the break. So this is really just the most basic risotto. I don't have a recipe. I just sort of do this. There are some amounts that I pay attention to, but I have those memorized. And then other than that, I just go. So I start with 4 times as much liquid as I'm making rice. So last night I was doing 2 cups of the arborio rice. And so I put into like a medium saucepan 8 cups of broth or stock, water, and bouillon. You can even just use plain water, but it tastes better if you have something with some flavor. I bet you could use the V8 in there. I haven't actually tried it, but I'm pretty sure it would work very well. Not the whole 8 cups, but like 1 can of V8 in there for extra flavor, for sure. It would definitely tint the risotto a like pale pink color, maybe a pale orangey color, but it would be tasty. Okay, so you have the 8 cups of liquid heating up, lid on, turn it on high. You need that to come up to a boil, and then chop up about half of a large onion. You want like half a cup, as much as a full cup is fine. And then into a bigger pot. I use the kind of pot that I would use to make like soup for 6 people, like chili, that kind of pot. Into there goes about 2 tablespoons of butter, and then the onion over like a medium-low heat. You don't want to brown the onion. You're just softening it in the butter. Then to that, you are adding the 2 cups of the arborio rice. It's a short grain rice. You're probably familiar with it, and it just lets out a lot of starch, which is what causes the creaminess in this dish without adding any cream. Although we are going to add a little more butter and some cheese later, absolutely. Okay, so you add the rice to the onion and butter, and you just sort of stir it every now and then. You're trying to not exactly toast it. It's not really going to change color, but it's going to get kind of translucent, and maybe you'll see a couple little grains lightly toasting a little bit. That's when you know it's ready. And to that, you are then adding 1 cup of dry white wine. Or if you don't want to use white wine, just go in with a cup of water, and you're deglazing in case anything is stuck to the bottom of the pot. And you're going to just stir and cook that over medium heat now. And we're going to keep it on medium heat for the rest of the time. You're going to stir and cook over medium heat until all of the water is gone. Some of it is absorbed by the rice and some of it has evaporated away. Okay, by now, your pot of flavorful broth, I'm going to just call it broth going forward, but whatever it is you've got there, that should be at a simmer. You're going to get 1 ladle of that and add it to your rice mixture, along with about a teaspoon of salt. And then you're stirring and cooking until it's mostly absorbed. I tend to look for, when I pull my wooden spoon or spatula kind of through it, touching the bottom of the pot, that it stays so I can see the bottom of the pot for a good moment, like not a minute, but like, yes, I see the pot down there before it kind of all oozes back and covers the bottom of the pot. That's what I'm looking for. So when it does that, then I add another ladle, and you just keep stirring and then adding that that ladle of broth every time it gets soaked up until the rice is nice and tender. Now it's going to take about 30 minutes from the time you start adding those ladles of stock. Did I say that I was going to call it broth going forward and then refer to it as stock over and over again? Of course I did. You know what I'm talking about. Your pot of simmering liquid should stay simmering the whole time, and you just add a ladle at a time and stir, stir, stir until it's absorbed in, and then you add another ladle. Now, the texture of the rice is one of these tricky things. If you've seen like Gordon Ramsay on his show, the one where they made risotto all the time and he was mad at everybody because they were always making it wrong, he liked his rice to be a little bit al dente. I don't love that. I actually like the rice to be soft. So I actually cooked a little bit longer, and I will actually admit that last night when I made this, I think I slightly undercooked it. I would have liked it softer. And Olivia, who was here this morning and was having some leftovers, said that the leftover risotto was perfect because the rice had softened that little bit more. So I do like mine softer. So you're going until it is the texture that you like, maybe slightly underdone below that, although that is what I did yesterday and I wasn't happy with the results. So maybe go to the texture you actually want, and then it should still be like creamy. You might want to add a little bit more of the stock or broth and just have it be nice and creamy. And then you're adding in about a cup of shredded Parmesan cheese and a little bit more salt. Taste it, salt, pepper. Sometimes I add a little garlic powder at this point. I know I could have added garlic with the onion, but I don't always feel like it needs it. And I kind of decide at the end, like, oh, do I need a little more flavor here or not? Okay. So Parmesan cheese, salt, maybe pepper, maybe garlic powder, a little bit of butter could get stirred in at this point too, about 2 tablespoons. And then if I have anything like some fresh flat leaf parsley or like chives, I would stir those in now, like a nice soft herb that doesn't need to like cook in it the whole time. If I had the kind of heartier herbs like rosemary or thyme or sage in my house at the time and I wanted to add that, I would have done that near the beginning, more like after sauteing the onion just before adding the wine to the mixture. So that's when you would do that. And so at the end there, it's the Parmesan, the butter, salt, pepper, maybe garlic powder. And if you want a little bit of parsley or chives, give that another stir and serve. That is how I make risotto without a recipe. I'm curious if you make risotto differently from me. I am going to be posting about this in our Facebook group. You can go there and let me know if you do anything differently. That group is at facebook.com/groups/recipe-OTD. And I will be back after the break to talk about what is or isn't going on in my kitchen this week. As mentioned, I am heading on vacation to Mexico this week, and so I am not really planning to do any cooking. Although we are hanging out with my parents who are staying there, and we have a kitchen, and so it's possible that we might do some cooking. I did tell my mom to plan to not cook so that we could all relax and that we just go out to eat. So I think that is likely the case. And of course, if I'm in Mexico, I'm not doing any professional cooking, not testing recipes for the websites or anything. Although, you know, if I'm eating in restaurants, I'm probably going to be scoping out ideas for new recipes. That is almost for certain. But no cooking, no photos, no videos. I'm going to be off the clock. So I don't have anything to tell you about that I'm going to be testing this week. I can tell you what is new on the websites recently. So on Cook the Story, we have a classic scalloped potatoes recipe that went live. This is the scalloped potatoes recipe that I have been making for years and years and hadn't put on the website because I was in this like, does the world need another scalloped potatoes recipe? There's plenty of them out there. But at some point, the last time I made it, I was like, you know what? This is perfect. The potatoes end up perfectly tender. The sauce is just the right amount, beautiful flavor, and it ends up just brown on the top a little bit, just exactly right. And I convinced myself that yes, the world did need another scalloped potatoes recipe. It needed this one, and now world, you have it. So that is on Cook the Story, the scalloped potatoes recipe. And then on the Cookful is my egg salad recipe. So that's another very simple, basic one. But this egg salad is different from how most people make it. And it's a technique I learned a very long time ago that just makes the best, like, creamy egg salad. And what you're essentially doing is you hard boil your eggs and then you pop the yolks out and you mash those together with the mayonnaise, and then that gets mixed with your chopped up egg whites. So you don't have any of that like dry yolk that didn't get mixed, nothing crumbly. It's a very smooth mixture, and the egg whites are never coated in just like plain mayonnaise. They have this like lovely yellow coating to them. It's just really, really good egg salad. So that recipe went live on the Cookful this week. I will link to both of those in the show notes for this podcast episode. I will also link to the other things that I've mentioned, the COOKforTWO.us membership, so that you can join me at those Stir It Up live events that are coming soon. And I will also link to the YouTube live event that Marty and I have coming up, where we're going to be cooking live for you. So I will link to those in the show notes for this podcast episode also. And you can also get all the links if you go to cookthestory.com/ROTD. That is where you get the links for this podcast. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is March 14th of 2026. I am Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, COOKforTWO.us, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great weekend. Let's get cooking.